The secret police agency of Gobernación, which is the Interior Government Ministry of Mexico. Amado had one of those badges. He was an agent at the time of the bust of the Buffalo marijuana complex in Chihuahua, Mexico. A vast multi-billion-dollar operation, which at the time employed 7,000 farm workers on the marijuana fields.
The biggest drug plantation ever created on Earth. One so large it could be seen by American satellites.
The drug complex was exposed by DEA agent Enrique Camarena, who was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered by leaders of the Guadalajara cartel, Carrillo's uncle among them.
In the investigations that came out later, it turned out that the DFS was deeply involved in the protection of this operation, along with the MFJP, the Mexican Federal Police, and the Mexican Army.
The cowardly murder of Enrique Kiki Camarena, special agent with the Drug Enforcement Administration, was carried out by the Mexican government in conjunction, in cooperation, in partnership with the godfathers of the drug trade.
Phil Jordan retired from the DEA after 30 years of service, including 10 years as special agent in charge of the Dallas office and 1 year as head of EPIC, DEA's El Paso Intelligence Center, the largest database of drug trafficking information in the world. He and Camarena were good friends.
To this day, Mexico has never apologized for having captured and delivered Kiki Camarena to the traffickers.
Because of the international pressures that resulted, mainly from the United States, the DFS dismissed 400 of its agents. And I have to assume that Amado was one of those 400 who were dismissed at that time.
In 1985, Carrillo made his way to the border town of Ojinaga, a village situated near the Big Bend region of Texas that was rapidly becoming a major distribution center for narcotics in northern Mexico.
It had always been very important for marijuana and heroin, but after the cocaine smuggling shifted from the Caribbean into Mexico, Ojinaga became cocaine central.
At the time, Pablo Acosta was the undisputed crime boss of Ojinaga, having smuggled heroin and marijuana in the region for close to 15 years. He had finally taken control of the region, or plaza, 3 years previous. In a process known as piggybacking, the Guadalajara cartel had added cocaine to Acosta's well-respected operations.
Pablo's strength was that he had the protection soda for that whole region, and so the cocaine coming in was secure. Nobody had to worry about it. If it was in Pablo's hands, it was safe.
Proof that Carrillo was in Ojinaga came in 1985, when U.S. Customs agent detained him for carrying an automatic rifle into Mexico. This was Carrillo's first and only run-in with U.S. law enforcement, and it produced the oldest known photographs of the man who would become Mexico's most powerful drug lord. Carrillo spoke freely with the customs officials, giving them a great deal of personal information. And even though U.S. intelligence had already identified Carrillo as a powerful trafficker, they did not know how the Sinaloan fit into Pablo Acosta's organization.
They seemed at least to have had a good friendship. Pablo, when I was with him, was very proud of the ingot around his neck. I asked him about that. It was a 1 ounce gold ingot. He said it was a gift of Amado, and then he showed his watch. It was a solid gold Rolex that also, according to him, had been a gift of Amado. He wore it everywhere. He was, like I said, very proud of that. In fact, when he died, he had the same watch around his wrist.
Carrillo's arrival coincided with a sudden upswing in the amount of cocaine being flown into Ojinaga. Experts now believe that Carrillo's role at the border was a dual one: to coordinate his uncle's Colombian shipments and to apprentice under one of Mexico's most experienced smugglers.
Amado everything he knew. Amado was a little bit smarter though. You know, Pablo Acosta used to freebase cocaine and do all this stuff. I mean, he was, even if he hadn't gotten killed in a shootout, he was almost...
We were sitting there in an apartment above a radio station. There was a long table there, and there was ashtrays overflowing with cigarette butts. There were machine gun clips. There was his AR-15 right behind him. He had a 45 in his belt. At some point, he pulled out a little bag with cocaine and then a box of flame, and it melted, it bubbled up and then fused together. And for the rest of the night, he was either scraping that stuff into a powder, making packs of cigarettes to smoke that he kept in his pocket, or smoking the stuff. Everybody I've talked to about him attributes his decline and fall to cocaine. And then Amado came over. He walked into the room. He was dressed in Western, I recall. You know, a little bit pudgy, friendly. A little overly friendly, in fact. There was one thing I remember, though, that really stands out, and that was a sort of a glint in his eyes. And I think he knew the fact that Pablo was talking to an American reporter spelled his doom. I think Amado knew that. He was aiming to take over. And taking over meant getting rid of Pablo.
We will never know if Carrillo ever challenged Acosta's authority directly, but in 1986, the two men exchanged heated words at a restaurant in Ojinaga.
Pablo and Amado's operation included a ranch not too far out of town, maybe 20 miles, where there was an underground storage tank. It's like, you know, an old gasoline tank, you know, next to a runway. Turboprops of cocaine, 1,800-pound loads, and then offload it and bury it in a tank. And only the traffickers knew about this tank. Somehow or other, the DEA found out about this tank. Somehow or other, Amado found out that the DEA knew about it. Now, independently of Pablo, Amado had 6 people rounded up who had knowledge of that underground tank, and he had each one of them tortured to death to find out if there was a leak or if they knew anything about a leak. And none of them did, but they were all dead.
Acosta confronted Carrillo, asking him what he had accomplished by killing 6 innocent men. Carrillo replied, coolly,
eliminas a todos, eliminas tu problema.
it is better for 6 innocent men to die than for one guilty man to go unpunished.
I think Amado learned some lessons from Pablo. He didn't learn the crack cocaine lesson very well because he appeared to do that for the rest of his career. But he did learn that the high profile had some real strong drawbacks.
During his interview with Terrence Papa, Pablo had revealed part of the protection scheme unique to Mexico's organized crime groups. That in order to control the plaza, he had to make regular payments to both the Army and the Mexican Federal Police. As soon as the interview was published, the order came from Mexico City to arrest Pablo Acosta.
For the next 5 months, they chased him all over Mexico. He ended up hiding out in a river village on the Rio Grande. And he was trapped in an adobe hut for about an hour. They had a hellacious gun battle, and he was killed. He refused to give up.
When Acosta went on the lam, Carrillo disappeared. Some believe he was involved in Acosta's death.
I can't speak for the DEA. I can speak for the intelligence that was known, and the intelligence was that Amado Carrillo Fuentes paid the Mexican Federal Police $1 million to have Pablo Acosta killed.
Never have a high profile. Don't talk to reporters. Don't let anyone know your name. Kill people that publicize your name. Because that's what killed Acosta. He became too well known, thereby becoming an embarrassment to the Mexican government that employed him, which they did. The police and the government in Mexico get a cut of everything, including crime. So if you want to be a criminal, the head criminal, you have to establish that you're in charge of the plaza, that you represent the criminal element. Then you can go to the comandante and cut a deal. And the comandante will tell you can do anything you want, but if it gets to be trouble, I'm going to kill you, arrest you, jail you. But if that doesn't happen, you just give me my bike, and you can do business. That was the way the plaza system functioned.
Over time, it was natural for individual plazas to band together into larger alliances. Carrillo's original mentor, Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, expanded his operations north of the border, forming the Tijuana cartel. Juan Garcia Abrego consolidated coastal smuggling with prohibition routes across the mountains to create the Gulf Cartel. The Juarez cartel was under the control of Rafael Aguilar Gallardo, a former commander of the DFS, Carrillo's alma mater. It is from Juarez that Carrillo resumed his air shipments from Colombia, mere days after Pablo Acosta's funeral. Aguilar's former role as a federal secret policeman gave him unique access to the workings of traffickers throughout the region. information he most likely turned to his advantage in growing his cartel's influence. It is believed that Aguilar had an existing cocaine deal with Colombia's Cali cartel before Carrillo came to Juarez. Carrillo's connection to the Median traffickers was a welcome addition to the business. Then in August of 1989, Carrillo was arrested in Guadalajara, charged with trafficking for the Colombians. The military confiscated 6 of his aircraft, 4 of them jets. He was released a few months later.
He was arrested, though. A photograph was taken of him that was distinctly different from the photograph taken of him in Ojinaga when he applied for a border crossing card. The only way that I could think of for a person to radically alter his appearance.
Amado everything he knew. Amado was a little bit smarter.